Yeah, so you created a SQL server in the same resource group, right?
No, this one by mistake it got moved to RG. So that's fine. We can change it later.
Okay.
That's fine for now. So or we can move actually later, but it will take some time. So you can click
Oh,
move
that's
to another.
fine.
It will see if we can move or not. But meanwhile, let's go ahead with this.
Mm-hmm.
We publish all this. Okay, publish done. Okay. So I set up one SQL server. So this is a SQL server. If you see, this is a SQL server name. That is server 0719. And this in this I created one database, that is sample database. This is a sample database, and in this I created just one table. So before that we have to set up the settings. Okay, like
Mm-hmm.
there's a firewall setting that you need to enable this one. Allow Azure services and resources to access within this server. Otherwise from ADF you cannot read this data.
Okay.
Okay, and then your if in case let's say you are using a third party like this DB Brewer or SSMS
Mm-hmm.
to connect like you'll have your editors, right? Powerful editors
Right.
to just query UI based. Then you
Mm-hmm.
need to come and add that machine's client IP here.
Okay.
So if you see in the firewall, see you can just click on this. You can add a firewall, like you can add a firewall, and then it will say rule name, your IP, start IP and end IP. Then you
Okay.
click
A
OK. So
single
for
IP, it's
system IP.
okay, got it. Mm-hmm.
So if you see, this one is what I added mine, but that was not required because I for one dummy table I queried it using the default query editor.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so that is one thing, and then you should keep this public access network denied when you're doing in production. For now, I just let it selected networks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that generally they will take care of that, like the admins or whoever is doing that. So that all that networking, subnetting, and all they will do it. But from as a dev stand, these two are important.
Okay.
Okay, firewall rules, public IP, so private access endpoint, and all you can add here. But this and all I have not added. Mainly it's these two rules.
Public access and firewall. Okay.
Yes, you should. In projects we will not give selected network. We will give it disabled.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they will. Sorry, they will keep this disabled. They'll give private access. They'll create a private endpoint, and
Mm-hmm.
then from we'll get one IP address like 10.11 dot something. They will create an endpoint. So if you create an endpoint, there's a process like we subnetting all that. I'm not that much good in that. But basically, when we do this for practice, we make sure these two are there. Otherwise, it will not work.
Okay, got it.
Okay, this is important, and this will be your database admin name. So when I created this server, right, I had
Mm-hmm.
selected two modes of authentication. One is SQL authentication and Azure AD. AD is like your who like you maybe with just the username login, whatever you have for each user. So for this, it is like this person is the user, right? So he can
Mm-hmm.
act even with this credential, he can log in. So what Azure will do is it will try to verify whether he's an part of an user group. If it is there, then it will allow. But that is not the preferred method. You should always use SQL authentication. So SQL authentication will have one username and password, server username and then server password.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this is your server name. In case through the third party APIs, if you are reading, you need this server name, and then this is the database name. So if I go to this is the overview, and if we click on this, and then here query editor. So I am using this default one.
Okay.
Okay, when I click on this, see, this is what I was talking about. I selected both, so I can either log in through this AD, that is Azure AD authentication. This is similar to in AWS we create the IAM roles, right?
Mm-hmm.
So similar to that, in Azure we call it as Azure Active Directory. So
Okay.
in when I was creating the server, I have selected this one, but in real time we don't do like that.
Okay.
Okay, so if I do continue as this also, you will be able to log in. But when I was trying to set up this, I gave SQL authentication mode. So then you will get one setup where you can set up your login name and password. So for new the login name is database I've created, and password is password@123 P capital.
Okay.
Just password@123. See, it logged in. So that is through SQL authentication. Similarly, you can even do it through Azure AD also, but that's not preferred. See, if I do see, it logged in. Okay, so usually we will not do development of any Azure SQL through this UI because it's really limited. It's not flexible. So we have to use Azure Data Studio or the standard SQL Server Management Studio.
Got it.
Okay, so that development will happen. This is just for one dummy thing. I didn't want to install third-party tools. Okay, so this is that, and what I did was I created one products table with 2 columns. Just select star from products. So this is a table I created. Says some
Mhm.
dummy 10, some 5 6 records. So this is your Azure SQL database. From here you wanted to have this as a CSV file, correct?
Mhm.
In our ADLS. So now let me go. Okay, we can move this. Let us move. I'm moving it to that underscore RG so that everything is in one. This will
Okay.
take some time. Let it happen. Okay, now let's go to storage. I think you already had created one ADLS Gen 2 storage, right? This one.
Yeah.
And demo container was there.
Mm.
So inside demo container, I use the same container, and this is a folder name, Azure SQL Server. Inside that, I'm copying this table to CSV file. That so this is our storage ADLS, and then the task is done through Data Factory, the ingestion tool. So if
Mhm.
you see here, this is a copy activity. So basically, before we come here, there are some things like we need to first have a link service. Okay. So how do I explain this one here? Okay, I'll just show it here. So we have to create 2 links. So step 1 is first we have to establish the connection.
Mm.
Okay, so here what are our 2 different systems? The source is Azure SQL Server. The target is Azure Data Lake Gen 2.
Yeah.
So to whichever system you have to connect first, you need to create a bridge between them. Now
Mm.
that is why we need called this as a link service. This this is just to have a credential manager. So it's like, for example, if I have to set up, and this will be like unique to each database. So for example, now whatever database I created, right, this link service is only a bridge between data factory and this particular database. Now let's say within that same server, I have 2 different databases. So you need to set up 2 different link service.
Mm.
So if you see here Azure SQL, just I'm just walking you the steps. So here Azure SQL Server database. This will be a like, and then you select your subscription. This is a server name.
Mm.
Then if you have multiple database, you'll just select. So for now, this is sample database. This is a master, and here authentication mode. So you have these many. We go to authentication mode as SQL, and the same like database was the username. Password was password@123, and then do test connection.
Okay.
See, we are able to connect. So let's say something I gave wrong. No, username is incorrect. See, it has failed. See, database master user database does not exist.
Okay.
So this is what I set up first one. Similarly, even within the Gen 2, if you see the Gen 2 settings, yeah, you will have a subscription, the URL of the Gen 2, and then the storage key. So that also I'll just tell you. So basically, you have a number of systems. So this is just to establish the connection. So it can be Cassandra, it can be SFTP, GCP, HDFS, Hive, anything. So I just need to bridge the connection between ADF to an external world or ADLS. So if I do Gen 2, again same thing. You'll select your subscription and then the storage name. This is the storage name. That's it. And then test connection. Connection successful. So this is the first step. So we need to set up the link service to whatever sources we want to connect. Second step is the data set. This is even before creating the pipeline. Okay, I'm going step by step. Now, what are the data sets? So data sets are pointers to each object within the source. So let's say in our case, source is a SQL server. So within the SQL server, you want to read one table, products table. So you need to tell this data set, you need to bridge the connection between the object to ADF. But that bridge to that object will happen via link service. Internally, dataset will use a link service what you set up in the step 1. Okay, that is source level. This is object level. Now the question will come like, okay, if I have 100 tables, should I create 100 datasets? Correct?
Yeah.
You don't need to create 100 datasets. You can write a parameterized dataset. So you can parameterize. Let me show that in database. Now this is the dataset what I created for the Azure SQL table. If you see here, let me create one new one so that you will. When I click on dataset, Azure SQL database, see it here link service. It is asking me link service, and when I wanted to create a database of dataset, then I will get only options with that particular link service. See here it's not showing me Gen 2 because this type is what I selected here is Gen 2. So link services Azure SQL database. So under this, it will show me in a drop down of products. Let's say here I have 100. So if I want to parameterize it, I do not select the table name here. I just leave it blank. And then I do not import the schema. I just click on OK. See, dataset got created here. This already I created in the morning. Just I wanted to show like how to parameterize. Okay, because I didn't want to hard code the table name. Okay.
Yeah.
So now how will you make it parameterize this? If you okay, let me go. For now, just forget about this. I'll walk you to the delimited. Similarly, I need to create one more data set in the Gen 2. Again, it will underlying, it will use, here I have different options like what file format of the ADLS you want. So if you want Parquet, you can select Parquet, you want delimited, binary, Avro, all this. So for now, I'll select CSV. And then see, if you see here again, see this time Azure SQL is not showing. It is showing only its related link service, so storage. Here again, so when you browse, you can browse to a particular path where this has to go. For now, I know that the root level is demo is a container. Container under that, this I created. Forget about this. Let's say nothing was there earlier. So let's say we need to mention the container. If you don't mention the container name, everything will get dumped at the root level.
Okay.
Root is nothing but the entire storage here. So everything will start coming one level below at this level only. Here only everything will start. But we don't do that. So we maintain one container. Let's say whatever project is there. Under that project, we create all subdirectories based on the source. Like let's say this is all SQL related server. We create one directory. Then under this, we'll have all the files related to SQL server. So that control will be given here. So this is the container name. So you'll just give demo here. Let's say here you have like Azure SQL Server. So you'll give Azure SQL Server. Tomorrow you have something like from AWS. So you'll just give AWS. Whatever it is just for you want to arrange your files in a certain way. And then the file name also, you can hard code or you can leave it. If you hard code it, always it will be like this. Then again, see, we have to make this as dynamic as possible. And then first row as header, you will not import any schema. And then you'll click on OK. Now I'll tell you where we can parameterize. Okay, first we'll go with static one-to-one, then I'll go to parameterization. Okay, so in this copy activity, there's a copy activity here. Whenever you want to move the data from one system to another system, this copy activity will do. And what copy activity will do is it will move, it will copy from one system to another system, and it will not delete anything.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not like moving from source to raw. It
It's
will just
copy.
take one. Yeah, it's a literal copy.
Mhm.
Okay, so here main things are these two: source, sink. Source is source properties of the source. Sink is target properties. So here we select what is the data source you want to copy from. So we created one data source here, right? SQL table. So in drop down, you will get all your sources, whatever, all the data sets what you created. So I
Mhm.
will appropriately, I'll select my source, that is Azure SQL Server table. And then here you have an option. So whether you want to do the full table copy, you can select table. Let's say you don't want to copy the whole table. Maybe you have some conditions like a query where you can limit the number of load or some logic. So you can select query, you can write your custom query. Or
Okay.
if you have a stored
CDC part is
procedures in
handled
database,
through this query, right?
huh?
CDC part is handled through this query.
No. See, this is normal query. CDC, here ADF is not that flexible. So whatever you want to do, when I say query, for example, this table is having 1 lakh records, whole table, but you want to read only today's data, whatever is insert. Let's say source is giving incremental. In Azure SQL Server, you're getting a load daily basis from some system, but when you extract from that system, you have to read only today's data. So you need to raise select star from the table name where the date column equal to current time. Some
Oh.
custom query you want to write, you have to do it here.
That query can also be parameterized.
It can be, but for parameterization, we go for stored procedures
Okay.
because you add your parameters here.
Mhm.
So usually parameterization, input parameter, output parameter is done to stored procedure. Query is used when you have to have, like, let's say even the source table is having 1 lakh columns, but I don't want to read all. I want to read only 3 columns. So kind of like a custom query, but not at the level of parameterization.
Okay.
Stored procedures are like in the SQL server, you will have one stored procedure which will do your logics. Let's say the CDC part or the merge thing, you want to do at the source end only. You don't want to you don't want to do push down predicate like doing it in this ADF. You
Mhm.
want that logic to be executed at Azure SQL, return your data set, and that data set you want to push it to the target. So those kind of things we will do in stored procedure. Stored procedure is just think like functions.
Mhm.
Okay, so you'll select your name, and if that is having parameters, it will show all the parameters which you need to pass to that stored procedure.
Got it.
So for now, I'll just keep it table. Table is full copy. Then you can do limit query timeout. So if the established doesn't happen from here to that data source, that outside world, it will timeout or it will fail. And then
Oh.
you can do physical partition of the file and all. But usually we don't do all this. Like I don't explore much because the role of ADF is generally just to ingest the data. Here we don't do all these derived columns and all. We can do, see, we have options, limited options, but we don't do. You can set up your derived columns. Let's say source is not having timestamp column. So you want to add a timestamp column, just give it a name, and then whatever value you want to do, you just add dynamic content.
Okay.
But it's not that flexible. No one does this. We can all do in Spark. See, some function I want to add like time functions, UTC now. So it will come here. Just you will say like time. This column will get added to your incoming source. That's it. That is the part of this additional columns. And you can preview your data. You can just click on preview. See, it will show the data what is coming in source. So here I did on table level, right? So it showed everything. Now for let's say I wanted to only where product name equal to maybe laptop.
Mhm.
I'm not sure. Okay. See, one record it should return. I'll paste the same thing here. Okay, now when I do the preview data, it gives only one record. Got it, right? So this is a custom query. Whatever you want, you didn't want all the columns or all the rows, you can just specify it here. Stored procedures are, you have to write the stored procedures here. You can see here, right? You will write the entire logic, parameterize it here. Then this will take the input parameter. Maybe this laptop, you want it to come from some other system. And then that will read here, execute it, and it will give the result to this guy. It's like that. So
Okay.
this is this. And then in the sync, how we want to write to the target. So in our case, target is our ADLS path, correct? So again, it will show all the list of all. So we selected delimited text file. Copy behavior, you have here different permutations, like you can preserve hierarchy. So if you have nested files, let's say one parent and then multiple childs within that, you want to, so you will give the path of the copy till root only. You will not go till the last granular level, but you want that same thing. Let's say first one is country, then you have states, then you have cities. And if you want to maintain that level of hierarchy of directories even in the target, then you have to click on preserve hierarchy.
Okay.
Merge files is from the root till the last level, you will flatten everything and give as one list of files in the target directory. Source will have hierarchy, but in target you want to flatten it. And flatten no, sorry, merge files is it will merge into one file. Sorry, that is flatten hierarchy, whatever I told you. Merge
Okay.
files is, let's say in one directory, you will always get incremental files. So on daily basis, like today I got just 20 records. Tomorrow you will get 30 records. Day after tomorrow you got 40 records. So your job is you should always read all the files and produce one file. So in that case, you select merge file. So it will merge all the files and give you one file at the target. So you don't have to manually again merge it. So these and all we just have copy. So usually we don't do much of complex things here because we do it in Spark. So here again, you can control what is the block size you want at the target, maximum concurrency threads, and metadata you want to have anything you can add here. But all this we don't usually touch.
Okay.
And quote all text file extension is CSV. If you want it as TXT, you can give it as TXT. So all these are just like HDFS parameters like max row per file, block size, concurrency. All these are just tunable parameters. And mapping is how you want to map the source columns to target columns. So let's say in source, here we got it as product name and price. In the target, I don't want this product underscore name. I want it as product, only product. And here I don't want price. I want list underscore price. So whatever you want to rename, you have to do import schema, and then you will get those two columns and then you rename it in target. But that is not a preferred approach because you cannot write it, you can't write a generic code like that. Because when you're trying to pull two tables, right? That's the next thing what I was telling. Like when you want to pull with the same data set, I want to pull 100 tables. Then if you do import schema and you do a mapping, I think here it won't show because I have not import. Okay, it came. So if you see here, what I was talking about is the source is getting product name. But in target, I don't want it to product name. I want to rename it like product underscore full underscore name. And price, I don't want list. I want list price. And data type also. Here I want both as string. So you can set like this. But why people don't prefer like this is, okay, I'm ingesting n number of files with different schema. So you can't keep doing like this dynamically, right? So tomorrow one more table came. So you cannot again map like this. So
This
we read
can be
everything as it is
parameterized
with,
from some YML file or JSON file kind of.
we can do, but all this anyway in Spark we will do, right? Once it's into the raw zone, see it will bronze zone, we will pull it as it is. from bronze to your trusted zone, we implement DQs and we implement the schema, and then we implement this rename of the column names, everything there. So that's why we don't do the heavy lifting here, like renaming, changing the data types. All that usually we don't do. I mean, we keep a copy of one-to-one in raw zone. Now that's we call it as raw, but people call it as bronze. So here we usually don't do it, and it will cause an issue when we have one data set for multiple tables, because it will say like these two columns are not found in the next table. Let's say I'm ingesting a country column, so those columns won't be there in the source, right? This import schema will not work that time.
Correct.
So that's why we don't do that. So I'll clear this. I don't want to. Okay. So let me run this again. You'll see it lower, right? See, it started. If you click on the spectacles, it will open up one UI where you can see my source is Azure SQL Server, and then your target is in ADLS Gen 2. How many rows read it has read, and how many concurrent threads happened while reading, and how many concurrent threads it used to write, and the amount of data written, and execution time and throughput.
Okay.
This is just for our thing. Okay, so this is if you see now in the ADLS, I'll just refresh it. 1033. This file just got now, and if you see the contents of this file, click on edit. See, it's a common limited file. So this is how copy activity works. Now the main thing, people don't do like this because 100 tables, I cannot create 100 data sets. So what we do is there is something called parameters here. Okay, this is like parameterizing. So I'll create two parameters. One is for table name and then file name. And what I'll do is source. So this table name, we left it empty. When you see here, it is hard coded to product name. So I'll click on edit. Oh, no, not edit. I'll just leave this blank. Before this, I need to come into the data sets and also create a parameter. And what I'll do is add dynamic content. You can see the parameter name now, table name. See, now I parameterize. So dataset dot table name. Okay, I'm no more hard coding it. So now if you go to the copy activity, see, automatically the parameter value is popping up. So whatever value I give here now, it will get mapped to this value during runtime.
Okay.
Now who will give during runtime? I will.
What happened? Can't hear you.
Yeah, so this value again, we should not hardcore here. So I can't say like table is equal to product, right?
Correct.
Because so every time you can't come here and change it. So again, for this, I map the parameter what I created in the project parameters. See, now this also became parameterized. So two level of parameterization happened. One at the pipeline level, one at the dataset level. So I created one parameter for this dataset. You can see, right, table name. I usually maintain the same names. So what happened is this guy will get value from this guy.
Okay.
And who will give the value to this guy? This guy. This guy is nothing but I'm mapping it here. If you click on debug, you can see one pop-up comes up. Earlier this pop-up didn't come, right, when I did debug.
Yeah.
So during runtime, this value will be passed.
Got it.
Okay, so this is completely parameter. So now with the single data set, let's say the schema of the tables are all same. I can just give the table name. Okay, file name also I'll tell why I used. So when I go to the sync, I open the sync. Similarly, I do it. So here also I create one parameter, file name. Come to the schema, connection. See, file name we had not given anything. Now I'll just give this file name. So now this got parameterized file name. I'll come to the pipeline. See, file name came. Now this I'll not hard code. I'll again come map the file name. I mapped it. So now if you see, both these values will come during my runtime. So the same thing, whatever was the product table name, let me give products. See, I'm giving during runtime as products. Let's say this time I'll give file as test. Now in this demo already we had dbo.products.cpo .csv. We'll see what will come here now. See, test file got.
Okay. So if you have like 10 tables, then how to?
Any number of tables it will handle.
So how to? But we have created one parameter, right, for one table and file name, right?
No, that is for one set of data. You should think it's not for one table. So tomorrow, let's say I had two tables. Here I had products and one more. I can this products will be just changed when during the runtime. I will give that product name. Let's say it's some sales table. Then I will give this sales CSV. Then this was some invoice. It will still go and hit the same source, right? So during runtime, the table name will be passed as sales here. This value will go and propagate to this guy. Two level of handshake will happen. One at the pipeline parameter, one at the data set level. So one data set, one pipeline, you can parameterize it for one source and n number of tables. See, just look at this. There is something called parameters. See, this is a global parameters for each pipeline. Pipeline level parameters is what we say. I created one thing called table name. Now this table name guy, who will get this value will come at runtime. Whatever comes at pop up here, right? These two are same. See here, pipeline parameters. Okay, so whatever I give value here, it will let's say whatever value I give here, it will come here first. First, so this during runtime, this will get replaced with let's say sales. Now this value it will go inside the data set. So pipeline parameters have given to source. Source parameters are going to dataset parameters. See, this is dataset. You can see left side. I'm pointing to this, or you can see here. This is a dataset. Now that guy is coming and giving the value here, and then the data it will go and hit select star from this table line. That's how it's propagating. Similarly, even in the ADLS, if you see pipeline parameters, when I do click on debug, file name, I will give let's say XYZ, or the test I give. The test value will first come to this guy. This test will get copied to this parameters. Then this test value will come to sync for whatever file name is there. It will come and give here as test. And then this value will go inside the data set and it will replace this test. So the full path will be demo slash Azure SQL Server plus test file. You can even parameterize this. You can parameterize even this. So I can parameterize this one. Let's say even the container names. I will just give container name. Even let's say subdirectory, subfolder. Now immediately when I give this, no, before I do this, let me go to sync. I'll have to first come from bottom to top. So here container name. Here it's not necessary to give the same name, but for us to understand, we usually give the same name. Now I hard coded this to demo, right? See, container name, I'm mapping it. See, container name came. The subfolder also I hard coded, add dynamic content, subfolder. Got it. Now if you see in the pipeline, automatically these two, it will, the upstream guy will be expecting. See,
Okay.
now this guy also I will not hard code. I will map it to container underscore name. Subfolder, again subfolder. Got it. So everyone is parameterized now. So when I click debug now, you will see more parameters it will ask. See, let's do the same thing. Products, file name, let's do test one. Now container, I will not give demo. Let me create my own, let's say SQL. Subfolder will be Azure SQL. See, it will run now without any error. It will create a new container. Within that container, it will create one directory Azure, oh no, SQL, and then under SQL, it will give Azure SQL file name. See, SQL container got created. Azure SQL directory got created. Test1 got file got created. Same file. So these are the most powerful things when you don't have to do the same thing again and again. So there are other things. So where we have to use like other components are there, like this is all to move and play. You 90% will use copy activity. We don't use data flows because data flows indirectly uses a UI form of Spark. So we don't use this. Mostly used is copy. Databricks whenever we have to execute a notebook. So let's say the entire logic I have written to do ingestion. Oh, sorry. Forget about DLT. Let's say we were doing some code, some piece of code on the raw files. I'll write my entire logic in Databricks notebook. That notebooks I will just bring here, and then I will try to run it from here. So all for scheduling, everything is done through here.
ADF will be used as the orchestration tool.
Yes, it's like, think like it's replacement for your Airflow and Scoop and your cron tab. Cron tab we write everything through code. Here everything is drag and drop. So that is this. Even one simple Python code you can write in Databricks. Again, it's all linked to Databricks only. And then these are data lakes analytics. USQL is proprietary to Azure SQL, but we don't use all this. Lake analytics is nothing but without bringing it into Spark cluster, you can write queries on top of the raw file using USQL. But we don't use that. And these are the most used one. Appending the variables, deleting the files after you consume. And you can create like master pipeline and then child pipeline. Let's say I want to have one master pipeline, and then let's say each source of ingestion is like you are reading 10 sources, but one master pipeline will trigger all that parallelly inside. So that is your so it's like when this activity is used when you want to execute another child pipeline. This fail activity is like you want to have some condition check and you want to forcefully fail an execution. Metadata is to get like some details of all the list of files in a directory or when was it last modified. So metadata of an object. If it's in ADLS, you'll get like last modified timestamp, parent file, how many files are there in that location, like that you can see if you want. There are some props. See if I put on this directory. So you can see some things like child items. Means if I give input directory and I select child items, it will give me list of all the child items present in this column count, if that file exists or not, name of the file, type of that file, last modified, size, structure. If it is a SQL, if it's based on every source, it will have its own limitation. So it's not like the parameters are same. If I select SQL Server, see the number of arguments will change. So you have only 3. It will only tell whether table exists and what's the structure of that. But if I select ADLS, you have a lot more flexibility. So this and all, when it is used is, let's say you were telling, right? So let's say I am taking care of the ingestion and you are just a or let's say even in ingestion, some system is dumping files globally, okay? And we are one of the projects. You want to read only few files in one directory. So let's say that's your scenario. You have one big directory, let's say organization level data. In that you want to first scan all the folders, but you want to pick only your project folder data there. So how will you do that? First you need to get all the list items, right? So you will point to the base directory, that is a root level directory. Then you will say get the child items, and then you will filter by last modified date, or you can put one more filter condition in the next content. So there are if conditions. So if you go here, there is an if condition. See, you can put if condition after this. So what you do here is you will get the list of child items. Okay, it will give the child items. In this if, you will write one boolean expression, the boolean expression saying the output of this guy should contain my project folder name. If it is containing my project folder name, then go inside that, or else don't do exit.
It's everything as a UI component, loop, if else, everything.
And then we do some validation.
Yeah,
Like
it's mostly people use it for the ingestion purpose. I'm hearing it
yes,
from multiple people.
yes.
Yeah.
So this should not be much hectic, but what is a best practice is you should write an ingestion pipeline which uses very less components and efficient one. So that is a challenging part in ADF. And scheduling also. So if you see here, I'm doing this in debug mode. So you can use triggers. So when you do triggers here, like let's say I want to trigger this on daily basis. So you can do different types of schedules are there. So you can do like mainly it will be scheduled only. Okay, this ingestion you can schedule it. Then you can select your start date, and then what is occurrence. So if you want daily, you just click on daily.
At cron tab kind of things it's here.
Yes. So everything you just think AWS cron tab, but what ADF unique selling point is people who don't know coding can come and do this.